So to understand more about cyber terrorism, I like to first go back to the word terrorism. What is really terrorism? So this is a definition from the Global Terrorism Index 2020. It is about the threatened or actual use of force. It is a illegal force, it's criminal force by a non-state actor. So who are these non-state actors? Normally, it is considered as terrorist group by governments. Okay. They are there to achieve some form of goals. They have an objective there, and it's normally for political reasons, religious reasons, and they achieve it through some emotional means like fear, intimidations. This is the gist of terrorism. So what is cyber terrorism? When we talk about cyber terrorism, it's really about these two words, cyberspace plus terrorism equal to cyber terrorism. So what it means is the terrorist activities is now happening in the cyberspace. What I've shared with you earlier on, the definitions, most of the time traditionally, we understand it as happening in the physical world. But when we talk about the cyber terrorism, we are now moving onto a different platform, a different space, which is the cyberspace. Let me explain a bit more about the differences. Now, the means of attack for the traditional terrorism, which we have all been very familiar with, in fact, the SG Secure program is really all about the traditional threats from the traditional terrorism. Normally, we will see means of attack like arson, putting out fire, chemical, biological, and radiological threats. The most famous one we all know is the anthrax attack. Then there are all these a bomb, which we have seen many of these in the newspaper. The most recent in the Kabul attack, the bomb attack there in the airport, where many people, civilians, both civilians and the soldiers, armies, okay, they are all killed. And also armed assault, basically using guns, okay, to kill people. These are the traditional terrorism, mainly via the physical space. We are talking about physical space like in the community, the buildings, whether it's a private or public space. We can see it, it will be near us. Whereas in the cyber terrorism, we are talking about moving into a different place, operating space. It is a cyberspace, it is the internet. So in a way, you will see a different form or different means of attack. And the means of attack are quite similar to what we have been hearing. We have been talking about cyber attack. Just now Veronica has been talking about cyber attack. Those means of attack that we've been seeing are like ransomware, malware, DOS, the denial of service, and phishing. Now, these are all the means that can happen, can be used by the cyber terrorists. So these are the two main differences. And okay, moving on to the next slide, the objectives. What are the objectives of the attacks via the traditional terrorism and cyber terrorism? Now, in the traditional terrorism, it is usually to achieve what? Injury, death, the blood. They want to see all this very emotional. We see in the news a recent attack. Then, of course, we want to cause disruptions to the operations, disruption to the airport operations in Kabul so that people cannot leave the country. Or destructions of the place to cause damage, property damage. This is the traditional terrorism. The objective is to achieve that. Of course, it will lead to intimidation, fear. People will be afraid. So similarly, when we talk about cyber terrorism, can it achieve the same purpose? No, it may be slightly different. You can see as of now, what we've seen in the news more commonly are financing, more on cyber financing. They're trying to get money to support the other physical operations, or they will be collecting information to aid them in launching a physical attack. But we have yet to see physical destruction or physical disruption, okay, using the cyber means. But I would think that this could be the future. This could be happening by launching a cyber attack, by using phishing means. Physical systems can be disrupted or even damaged. As we did a poll earlier on just now, there are so many of you who are actually having your organization systems, equipment already connected to the internet. So it could be possible for the cyber terrorists to then launch an attack on your company and disrupt your systems and make it malfunctions, maybe to spin out of control, your system will burn and it may cause physical damage. So the objectives may be slightly different, but ultimately it is to achieve the fear, the intimidations. So let's look at the cyber attack and cyber terrorism. Now, cyber attack and cyber terrorism, sometimes I would like to compare it with like crime and terrorism. Terrorism is just like a type of crime. So cyber attack is also just like another form of cyber terrorism. And there are so many similarities. Of course, firstly, they are illegal, it's criminal in nature, and you will usually see some form of information being stolen. Okay, and the means of attack are quite similar. As I already shared, like malware, basically it means malicious software, and ransomware, which is the growing threats, phishing, and even website defacement. Now, website defacement, while there are some similarity, their objective could be different. Because for terrorism, they could be there to put up their message there. They want to warn, tell the world that they have this particular message. Okay? So it's not really just to deface a website, because they are there to share, disseminate certain message. So in terms of differences, now cyber attack usually are more like for certain hacking group, hackers. They could be individuals or groups. They have got these objectives to get the monetary gain. They want to get money out of this. Okay? Or it could be just for fun of it. They want to demonstrate that they are very good in the IT skills. They just want to hack the system, disrupt the business, because they want to demonstrate that they are good. Okay? So it could be just for fun, or even maybe in certain cases, it could just to cause embarrassment to the organizations. But whereas for cyber terrorism, there is this connection to the physical means. Okay, ultimately, is they still want to see injury, death, or destruction of the physical means. But at this stage in time, we are seeing more of the terrorism financing and probably using it as a platform to coordinate a physical attack. But we should not rule out the physical destructions arising from an online attack. In years to come, I think this could be a trend, and there are already many suggestions online, articles, okay, suggesting that the terrorist groups are actually exploring at the means of using online to launch attack that could have a physical impact. So COVID-19 has increased the cybersecurity risk to many of us here. And this is primarily because of this work from home. Now, many of us are now required to work from home, and we are all using our personal devices. We are using the home network. Normally, for all these personal devices and network, it is less secure. So when it's less secure, means we are more vulnerable, we are more weak. So terrorists will have a better opportunity to attack your employees who are working from home compared to if they are working in the office. So unfortunately, this is the trend. This is the current trend. We have said from the norm to the new norm. Okay? So whether this new norm will carry on for the next 1 or 2 years, okay, it really depends. Okay? But as of now, at least for the next 1 year, as long as your employees continue to work from home and continue to use their own personal devices, the risk is there. So has business shift from the physical space to the cyberspace because of, in order to survive, right? Because the customers are now all going to the cyberspace, right? You need to go to where the customers are. If you continue to operate in your physical space, your customer is not going to be there for you. You have then to pivot your business model to the online model. So when you go to the online model, means more of us will have to have some form of website. You may have an e-commerce setup. Now, the more complicated your systems are, it means there are more risks. Okay? There could be more vulnerabilities. So there will be more attack surface for the attackers, the hackers. So we are actually, as the business are transforming into a new norm or the evolving norm, with the new opportunities, it comes the risk also. So digitalization is actually a double-edged sword. Okay, what we say, maybe some brick and mortar business, we are seeing many of these example cases. Maybe some of you are brick and mortar business, you are moving into some of these digitalizations. They're putting your products online to sell. Probably you have got some form of payment, online payment. You're using payment gateway. As you put more of your this business transactions online, okay, you're creating more business opportunity, more transactions are going on online. We actually increasing the cyber terrorism risk in two forms. First is a threats. Why are we increasing the threats to ourselves? Because of the assets accessibility. When I say assets accessibility means whatever assets, something that is of value to organization, you are putting more of your value, important things online. So example, you will be putting information online, right? You have a customer information. Maybe you will be linking to your database online to facilitate the transactions. And if there's payment there, it could be, your payment could be all online also. So with all these assets online, what it means is somebody overseas, they can actually access to your assets via the internet. They do not need to buy a ticket to fly to Singapore to reach your office or your shop front anymore. So internet has actually made it easier for the terrorists to access to every one of us. And also because of that, in a way, then of course, it becomes a bigger attack surface. So the more things you have online, let's say you have one website, or maybe you have 2 or 3 websites, you have got your mobile interface, you have got a payment interface, you got the shopping carts. The more you have online, it will mean you have got a bigger attack surface. So this will also mean there is an increase in the vulnerability. Vulnerability basically just say it means weaknesses. Weaknesses in terms of your systems, your IT systems. Okay. So digitalization will means equal to increase in cyber attack surface and also equal to increase in cybersecurity risk. So now the question is, do you know what is the risk of cyber threats to your company? Now, for big companies, they probably will have specialized in-house security personnel. They may have a information security manager who will help them to look into it. But for most of the other companies, the SMEs, they who have limited resources, they are very focused is on running the business, focus on the P&L part of it. They may have 1 or 2 person that oversees operation, HR, maybe SG secure rep, like many of you here, asked to look into these aspects. But many of us do not have dedicated resources just to focus on cyber threats. So how do you know what is the risk to your organizations and what do you need to do? Like what Veronica earlier says, we need to take a risk-based approach because every one of us cannot be doing the same thing, putting in the same investment because every one of us got different resources. So we need to look at the risk-based approach because your business model will be different from another company. One company could be just showing some products online. They're not going to do transactions. Their risk probably will be lower. But if your organization is going to do some form of e-commerce transaction, some form of payment, surely your risk will be higher. So how do you know what is your cyber risk? So I will be sharing with you a very simple model using this formula called risk is equal to threat times vulnerability times impact. So I will be showing you a very simple example. So first thing first, we have to know the assets. What are your assets? Commonly, for any organization, the assets include people, property, informations. People is your staff, your employees. Property means your physical office, you got some assets, okay, your products. Now, people property usually is more on the traditional terrorism we are more concerned with. Okay. But in terms of cyber terrorism, as of now, the immediate concern will be more on the digital assets. I call it the digital assets. Something is more easily accessible by the terrorists online. Okay. So this will include your intellectual property, your informations. Okay, maybe some products, example, something you can download online. It's a book. Let's say it's a book. Okay, they have to make some payment. You can download this book or some informations. Okay, intellectual property, okay, or personal data. It has been becoming a growing concern. Some terrorist groups, criminals, they want to get access to all this personal data, which may include your medical records. We have seen this happening in Singapore, right? Terrorists want to the criminals want to access to the medical records, and probably also some financial records like your credit card information, which they can then use it to siphon off money to finance their terrorist effort. So let's look at the model which I just mentioned. It's a very simplified model. So we are going to look at three things. When we talk about risk, cybersecurity risk, we can look at three things. First, we talk about threats. Okay, threats is talking about external. Okay, then later on, I'll talk about the vulnerabilities, which is about your company. Okay, and what is the impact if an attack happens. So looking at the first thing, the threat ratings. Now, threat here we talk about access to resources. So there are 5 criteria to help you to assess what is the threats, the cyber threats to your organizations. Now, access to resources, it means the attackers, how easily is it for them to access to all these tools, okay, to attack your company. So using a score of 1 to 3, okay, as I mentioned, this is going to be a very simplified risk assessment. So I will just use 1 to 3. In reality, we can use 1 to 5 or even 1 to 10. Okay, so 3 means higher threats, 1 means lower threats. So access to resources, information are actually very easily accessible. Any one of us can just go online and Google, you can find some malware or ransomware you can use, okay, or you can hire a hacker. Okay. Ransomware has a service. I'm sure you have heard about that. So you can just Google, you can just hire somebody to assist to you. So the access to resources is actually very easily, readily available. So the threat is high. So I give a 3 there. And knowledge, probably I just give 2, depending on who is going to do this. Okay, someone who has got more advanced knowledge can do a better job. But it's for some novice, they may only be able to do some simple form of attack. So I give a score of 2. And history of threats means, are there many such cases reported? Oh yes, there are so many cases. I think we can cite so many examples of cyber attacks. So definitely the threats is all around us. It's not just overseas, locally, we have got so many cases already reported. And assets accessibility means what? I just shared earlier on, what are your assets? So the more assets you're putting on online, okay, so here I'm talking about digital assets, then you are more at risk. But if you are telling me today, oh, that's I don't have anything online, I operate basically on a brick-and-mortar business, but if only it can survive these days because of the COVID-19 situations. But if you are pivoting to an online business, then you may have some form. As we have done the poll earlier just now, most of you have some form of assets online. Even your email, just now we talk about email, most of you has an email access, or rather I remember 100%. So every one of us will have some form of assets online. So once your information is online, your email is online, it is accessible. Okay, so okay, symbolic. I said symbolic means, okay, how important, how would people want to attack? Are you a significant company? Are you a company that many people know about? Is your branding very well known? Now, the more well known you are, the more established you are, maybe then people may want to attack you. So you will say, oh, I'm just a small company, SME in Singapore. Not many people know about my company. I just sell some insignificant product, so I am not at risk. That's fine, then you put 1. But if you think, yeah, I'm a very well-known company, I'm a very successful company, I think people all over the world know about me, you better put a 3 here. Okay. Then with all this, okay, these 5 criteria, you can do an average, you come up to 2.2. And using this table here, you can see score of 0, 2.2 is falls under here, okay, which is the threat level high. Okay, so using this simple table, you can see, oh, in a way, it could be high, the threats the cybersecurity risk could be high to me. Now, this is not a comprehensive table. I just use a simplified table of 5 criteria to give you an idea. If you score this, you are somewhere here. But of course, if you adjust some of this number, it may change. But some of this is difficult to change because it is external. It is influenced by an external factor. It's not within your control. Example, history of threats is not within your control. So this number will likely be high. Okay. So moving on now to the vulnerabilities. You got external threats. So let's look at now. How about your internal? Are you safe from it? Do you have weaknesses or not? So we will look at these 5 factors: susceptibility, okay, the size of the attack surface. Do you have a lot of attack surface as shared? Do you have many websites? Do you have e-commerce systems? And do you have the security measures in place, like antivirus software? Have you installed antivirus software? Do you have a program in place to make sure that your software are updated regularly? Okay, and yeah, most importantly, redundancy. Redundancy means do you have backup? And we say backup is really backup to an offsite location, not backup on the same locations. Okay. Recovery period means assuming if your system is down, how fast can you get it up? So how vulnerable is your company now? Okay, so same thing, we will do this table. I will put just now the 5 factors into this simple table using a score of 1 to 3. Okay, so you can try, as I'm explaining, you can try to write it on a piece of paper and ask yourself, hey, yeah, am I susceptible? So yeah, I would say maybe somewhere in between, or size of attack. Oh, okay, or I think also 2 because I don't have many. Maybe I got a website only, I got email. I think 2. Okay, security measures. Oh, I also say 2 because I have antivirus software. We have got a good cyber hygiene. The staff has gone through some form of briefing. Redundancy, fantastic. We back up our data regularly. Okay, and we back up it into an external hard disk. Okay, so there's a gap. There's no way for them to access to your hard disk. Now, recovery period means how fast can you get your systems out? So if the longer you take, then of course the risk is higher. Okay, so basically the score, the higher it is, the risk is more vulnerable. Okay, so then we get a score of 2.4. Okay, so 2.4 is somewhere here. The third one, high. Okay, so more vulnerable means you are more at risk. It suggests maybe you have to strengthen your security measures. 2 is not good enough. No, you may want to reduce it down to 1. Okay, if it's 3, it's even worse. Let's say you don't even have an antivirus, you don't have a firewall, you have basically nothing. Okay, then your vulnerabilities here is 3. Okay, the less things you have, then you will be 3. Okay, so same thing. We fill the table to get a feel of the impact as a result of a cyber attack. Okay, cyber terrorist attack. So if you say, okay, oh, I will lose money because basically all transaction gone. I cannot do transaction. Currently, your business has pivoted to an online model and all transactions are done online. And because now it suffered an attack, there are no longer any transactions. So it impact. It is going to be a bad impact. So you're going to give high ratings and loss of customers. Yes, your customers going to your competitors affects, disrupt your business, come to a total halt. No transactions because your website is not clicking. Reputations, maybe yes, no. You say, yeah, no, luckily the newspaper only come up one small column, not a big one. So hopefully nobody see the news. Okay, 1 means, okay, in this case, it's more likely that there should not be any injury or loss of life. So you may want just put 1 because, as I mentioned, now is more likely to be a impact to your digital assets. But we can never rule out that your system is able to churn out, example, some form of heat, some form of mechanical system. If it can be used to, the attack can destroy your system, it may cause some injury to the people around you. Okay, so in this case, I'm just assuming there is an online portal, some kind of website with some transaction. So I put it as 1. The risk is very low. Okay, and the average will be 2.4. And with this average, yet I come to these impact ratings of high. So what is the overall cyber threats? to your organization, what you need to do is you multiply by the 3 ratings. We have gotten the 3 ratings, right? The threat times vulnerability times impact. Okay, so you multiply the 3 ratings and you get a score. 2.2 times 2.4 times 2.4, you get 12.7, and you get a score here which falls under medium. Okay. So what this tells you is, now while you understand that the various risks, the threat, the vulnerability, the impact, overall risk to your organization is medium. So when you're in medium, you probably still should do something about it. And what do you need to do is you have to go back to the vulnerability there, okay, which is what I'm going to share in the next few slides. Now, the strategy for you to protect yourself against the cyber terrorism is focus on reducing your vulnerability and the impact. These are the 2 key things you have to do.